New week, and I know that it might be Christmas morning for some of you people. We've got top 10s positionally coming out, and this is what we really love doing here, right? The top 100, obviously, that's a great time, and we have so much fun comparing a pitcher to a hitter, but this is as apples to apples as we could possibly get. We start with top 10 second baseman. Jack, our Just Baseball show on Monday, February 20th. Instead of the Garrett Cole to Michael Harris conversation, now it's the Gleyber Torres to Brandon Lowe conversation.
Yeah.
And I think those are a bit easier to palate, right?
100%. And the fun part about this too is we did have some long conversations about these rankings. And this is the cool part too, is I'm sure as we go through these, you'll hear a little bit of the behind the scenes of maybe who was pushing for what and who leaned one way or another, because ultimately, we were willing to give and take a little bit and agree on this overall consensus top 10 that involved you, me, Peter, Colby Olson, and of course our managing editor Ryan Finkelstein, all of us on a call together, kind of fleshing all
It
of
was a
this out.
4-hour Zoom call.
Yeah, way too long. But it was a lot of fun. And, the cool part about this is you kind of have a mixture of all the opinions. You also will get a little bit of the background of who was pushing for what. And if I can remember off the top of my head, I'll definitely be like, oh yeah, that was something that like Peter or Jack pushed more for, or Fink or Colby. I know with shortstops, when people are going to be surprised about like where Tommy Edman is, I'm fully putting that on Colby. Like Colby was the biggest Tommy Edman pusher of all time.
Right.
So it makes it fun though. And we really were able to kind of come together and agree on this. So it's always something that can be moved around. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, you should have had this guy here or that guy there. There's no perfect list. But, I think we put everything we possibly could into this in terms of considering what they did last year, weighting slightly less, but still weighing what they did the year before that, what we think they can do the year coming up, whether it's the advanced metrics, whether it's just the narrative around the player. Health was an interesting point in this, and we'll get to that in each of the top 10s. And a little bit of everything to try to make the, most accurate quote unquote list we can, or at least what we feel the most strong about in terms of what we've put together here. So I think it should be pretty fun, but at the end of the day, if you disagree, it's all for fun. So we're just having fun with it.
100%. And you guys ate this stuff up last year in spring training time and the pre-regular season, and know you guys are going to do it again. Usually what we did is present this on the podcast that would eventually turn into an article, and we would clip one by one on the social media channels and push those out. Now we're doing it bit of a different way, and we're streamlining with social media channels and digital and all that. We're also streamlining with editorials. So one of our editors, Leo Morgenstern, wrote this article up. He was presented this list and he wrote this up. So if you want to follow along, go to justbaseball.com and listen as we go through the 2 honorable mentions and then 10-1 in second baseman. But before that, you said you have an NBA All-Star Saturday night takeaway as we were texting last night. You picked Jericho Sims to win the dunk contest?
I did. And I don't know if there was I don't know if there was a tougher watch in a while than the second consecutive elbow in the rim dunk.
The honey dip, and then trying to he was shaking as he was trying to open up the 50 that he ripped.
15, he ripped it. It was a tough watch. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, the reason why I bet on Jericho Sims, I'm not proud of. I don't go on TikTok very often because our faces pop up too much. Obviously, my algorithm is baseball, and we do a lot of baseball on TikTok. So when my face pops up, I close the app out. I just it's the end of my day. I'm done working. I just want to scroll through that to clear my head. Oh, there's my dumb face. So this time, my face doesn't come up. A Jericho Sims fan page came up.
That's sick.
And it was breaking down all of the reasons why Jericho Sims was going to win. It was 50-inch vert and a highlight of him doing this dunk. And I was like, you know what? I'm sold. So I went over to the betting account and threw 50 on Jericho Sims.
Dude.
And yeah, I got tricked by a Jericho Sims fan account, which the very existence of a Jericho Sims fan account should have told me that information was going to be a bit biased, maybe a little bit skewed towards pushing the Jericho Sims agenda. I took Kevin Herter to win the 3-point contest. I took Jericho Sims to win the dunk contest. And that's why I'm not going to bet on any of that stuff anymore. That said, I want to bring up one point before we get to the top 10s.
Yeah.
I vehemently believe that, like, I don't think it's relatively close. I think that the home run derby is the best all-star event in sports for
Yes.
a lot of reasons. The dunk contest used to be awesome, and I still think it was good. Mac McClung saved it to a degree this year, which
Yeah.
is crazy to say. They brought a dude up from the G League to save the dunk contest. The home run derby has some of the best stars in the game, and it's still a fun spectacle of seeing how many home runs these guys can hit and how far they go. The dunk contest, like, that's a really cool thing to see. But I mentioned this to you before. It's almost like if MLB brought up Moises Gomez to go win the home run derby because he's leading the minor leagues in home runs. Like, that would be lame. We've had Shohei Ohtani. We've had Aaron Judge. We've had Julio Rodriguez last year. We've had some of the game's best stars doing it. Now we've got dunk contests between G Leaguers and 10th guys on the bench. I just want to make this very clear before we go into the top 10. NBA All-Star Weekend was fun. It was fine. Nothing compares to MLB's home run derby. And I just want to make that clear. And I don't think anything will until we start seeing some of the game's best stars getting back into the dunk contest.
So yes, absolutely. Nothing compares to the home run derby. And I think a lot of that is the talent pool. Like, I think we would be putting the dunk contest on the same pedestal if we had Ja and Zion do it in the last couple of years.
No brainer. Absolutely.
No brainer. But like, the talent pool is not there. But you've got Aaron Judge and Pete Alonso and Vlad Jr. and Ohtani, like all the best power hitters in baseball do it. I love watching the 3-point shootout because we get a lot of the best 3-point shooters. Once they win it, they're done. Like, Dame Lillard won it on Saturday night and immediately said, like, I'm retired from this contest, never again. But that competitive fire with those guys, knowing that it won't screw anything up, right? Like the dunk contest, the risk of injury is so much higher than the risk of injury in the 3-point shootout. Like, you're literally just getting shots up for a minute, and it's a pretty good workout. So seeing a Dame and a Steph and a Clay, and like this year, a Buddy Hield who's leading the NBA in made threes and is like a 43% shooter, and Lowry Markkanen, it's good when you have the talent pool there. Yeah. So honestly, I'd say year over year since like Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon, the 3-point shootout's been better.
100%. I just wanted to get that out there before we jumped into the top 10 second baseman.
Fair. Also, you chirped me for wanting to watch the NBA All-Star game tonight. We're recording before the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm good.
All right.
It's like watching. It's like watching. Could you imagine the All-Star game for baseball? But they only groove it in 75 miles an hour down the dick. Like, that's basically what the All-Star game is with the incorporation or lack of thereof of defense.
But it's cool to see him jump high, and I'm with my brother who's at Santa Clara, so he.
Okay,
yeah.
We're NBA guys. Pull the sentimental card on me. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. He's also the one that I asked him like to name a bunch of Oakland A's, and he like went through, I think 10 to 15 and couldn't get a single guy that's like currently on the Oakland A's roster. When he said he won. Yeah. So I won't have him do that right now, though. I know he's sitting in the other room. All right. Top 10 second baseman.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Honorable mentions.
Yeah, the two honorable mentions, so 11 and 12. We've got them as Brendan Rodgers and Jonathan India. India, the 2021 NL Rookie of the Year, was dealing with injury a lot last year, was a low 800 OPS guy, but the counting numbers were good enough to win him Rookie of the Year. He's a fine defensive second baseman.
Yeah, I think that's a stretch.
But it's the bat, right? The bat carries India. I know Taylor Davis, if you listen to the call up, we just did a 2018 redraft and he took India 2, which you and I both thought was a bit of a reach, but he made some solid cases. He thinks that honestly a move to first could be in store for India, but he thinks that the bat plays. Obviously the bat's good enough to win him a Rookie of the Year. Do you think the bat bounces back, and do you think he can get better defensively as he's fully healthy?
Well, here's the thing. I think he's too athletic to put it first for what that's worth. Like, I'd rather him be in left because he can run. His arm is strong enough to get by in left. I do wonder how much the injury, was playing a part in the defensive woes. Because was he ever a great defender once he moved to second base? Like, not really, but he was fine in that Rookie of the Year season. And more than competitive there. I think if he was a fine defender last year, because he was one of the worst defenders at the position, if he was a fine defender, he probably cracks this list. And I like starting with India here because this is the case of, okay, we got to wait 2022 the most but you still have to consider 2021, right? This wasn't 10 years ago. This was, a year before the last season. So his incredible performance overall, I think what he did in Cincinnati, also his splits were strong. If anything, he was actually better away from Cincinnati. So, that tells you it wasn't just, being a merchant of Great American Ballpark. I think you can't ignore 2021 and what he did. And sophomore slumps are very common, as we know. It's why you literally have the term. If he improves the defense a little bit, I expect the bat to get back there. I really think the injury just kind of piled up on him. He only played 103 games ultimately, too. So it wasn't like he was really playing a full body of work here with the season. I think he's back in the top 10 by the end of this year, but I think this list, is too loaded, and he was just too disappointing on both sides of the ball last year. But I think he gets back in. What do you think?
I think so too, because I think that he's a low 800s OPS guy. I think that we're looking at a 120-ish WRC plus from India.
I agree. He hits the ball hard, which is important, obviously. Like he's got above average raw power, and I think he can tap into it in games a little bit more too, which we saw him do in the past. And it wasn't just Great American Ballpark, to make that very, very clear. He's got a good approach. His bat to ball skills are fine. Like, it's pretty surprising if you look at a lot of the underlying metrics that he was so bad last year. I know he wasn't like he was terrible, but bad for his standards. I really think it was injury dependent, and I'm expecting him to bounce back offensively. I don't know about the glove. If the glove stinks, but he's back to the 120 WRC plus, he's still a top 10 second baseman in baseball. So maybe they move him at that point. I know we've talked about it on the call up. A lot of infielders coming up in this system, but you cross that bridge when you get there. So when the McLeans and the Ellie De La Cruzes and the Noel V. Martes of the world come up, then, and even Spencer Steer now solidifying a role, that's where you'll probably say, well, India might be the guy to move to left if he keeps struggling. But I'm expecting him to get back in the top 10.
100%. And if he is a 120 WRC plus guy this year, for context, there were 4 second basemen with a 120 WRC plus or higher last year. And all 4 we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this episode, 3 of which at the very end. So that tells you if you hit, you're a top 10 second baseman. Really quick, last question on the India thing, because I honestly don't remember. He was a third baseman at Florida when he was a top 10 overall pick. Was he supposed to play third? Like, was he drafted as a guy that can stick at third?
Yeah, that was the case for him. And like, that's where they wanted him to play, and he was fine there, but the bat didn't really profile as a third baseman. His arm was a little bit stretched, and they didn't know how much power he was going to hit for. So I think, when you called the shot on him being rookie of the year after he performed well in camp, that was the spot for him, because they had Suarez at third and they had some other guys, and they kind of just worked seamlessly of like, he's already stretched in at the hot corner and we got a spot at second for him. And once he went there, I think, the rest was history. But for most of the beginning of his professional career, he was predominantly playing third base, and he even made a couple appearances at shortstop, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, 100%. All right, next honorable mention is Brendan Rodgers. And if you think Brendan Rodgers, you think, I don't want to say wasted potential, but obviously didn't maximize, because that draft was Dansby Swanson 1, Alex Bregman 2, Brendan Rodgers 3, and he was the high school shortstop. And you were thinking, okay, we've got 3 franchise cornerstone shortstops going 1, 2, and 3 overall. That's not what Brendan Rodgers is anymore. It felt like Trevor Story when he got his first audition in Colorado. He was like a placeholder for Brendan Rodgers to come, turned into a lot more than that. Rodgers never really fulfilled that destiny, but all of a sudden he was a 2-win guy last year. Yes, the WRC plus at 92, but he's a good enough defensive second baseman, and he can hit just enough to survive there. I don't think he's a top 10 guy. I think 11 or 12 is the perfect spot for him.
The splits kill him. Just what I was saying was a good sign for India in terms of, even in his good season, he hit well away from Great American. For Brendan Rodgers, man, it's night and day, home and road. And I always try to take the splits with a grain of salt, because you're hitting at home and the ball moves one way, and then you got to adjust a little bit on the road, and it's going to be a little bit different. So it's beyond just being in a hitter-friendly ballpark. But Brendan Rodgers at home last year, 313, 377, 498, which is an 875 OPS. By the way, that's only a 117 WRC plus at Coors Field. Remember, that's it's a park adjusted stat.
Correct.
That's still good though, right? Like if he was that overall, we're talking about well inside a top 10 guy. on the road, and it could be significantly worse, but it can't be this much worse.
Yeah.
218, 271, 317.
It's bad,
it's a
man.
65 WRC plus. That's just not going to work, right? You can't be 35% below average away from your home ballpark. I know it's tough to be a Coors guy, but that's just not going to fly. And I think that's the thing that ultimately holds him back right now, because even if he was an 80 to 85 WRC plus guy on the road, then I think he could weasel his way into this top 10, but he just has not been able to prove that he can hit away from Coors. And that's ultimately, what's done him in. I will say though, he did have a pretty nice second half. So I'm interested to see, how he builds off of that. He was a little bit better overall in the second half. And at the end of the day, he's 26, Jack, right? So, we see prospects that get up at 24, 25, take a year or two and start to settle in after that. Rodgers has the talent. He's a good enough defender, like you said, to be valuable. But this isn't what Rockies fans and the Rockies probably envisioned when he was the number one, arguably high school guy in his class and, selected 3 and kind of fast tracked through the minors before hitting a wall right at the big leagues.
Right. And the conversation that we have a lot about really solid Rockies bats is, can they survive if another place is their home ballpark? Like we saw a king's ransom come over for Troy Tulowitzki when he went to Toronto. We saw false. We didn't see a king's ransom for Nolan Arenado.
I was going to say, we saw a peasant's ransom.
Nolan
Arenado.
And then I was going to say, like, the conversations around a Trevor Story deal were king's ransom, but then that never happened, and more organizational idiocy from the Colorado Rockies letting Trevor Story walk for a comp pick, right? Like, yeah. I mean, so there's the conversation. Story obviously failed. Arenado succeeded. Tulowitzki failed. Rodgers never even created the opportunity to have that conversation around him, like Carlos Gonzalez did. Charlie Blackmon did at one point. Blackmon obviously never left. Rodgers, I don't think Brendan Rodgers is getting opportunities on very many other teams. But good for him that the Rockies have been this bad for this long, because until Ariel Amador or Bernabel is ready, he's got at bats for him to take.
Yeah, he's got time. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a step this year. I'm not saying, to be the 60 hit tool, 60 power guy that he was considered when he was a top 20 prospect in baseball. But, if he makes a little bit of a leap and starts to tap into a little bit more power, would you be shocked if he's a 275 guy with a decent on base, 15 to 20 home runs and plays good defense? Like, that's a borderline top 10, probably a top 10 second baseman.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would be shocked if he was for sure a top 10 second baseman, but I'm not going to be shocked. I think it's like a typical Brendan Rodgers season if he's here again. Like, honorable mention could be 10, maybe not. I have no idea. If there are some guys that are hurt, maybe he sneaks in at 10. I think Rodgers is that 92 WRC plus guy that he just put up. But we do get into the top 10, and it's Brandon Lowe, who is hampered by injury. He put up less than a win in terms of F4 in just 266 plate appearances. He hit 221 with a 308 on base and a 383 slug, which was well below what he did in 2021. This guy was one of the most underrated power bats in baseball in 2021. He just couldn't get healthy in 22. If he is healthy, do you think he's a top 5 second baseman?
I mean, I don't want to spoil the guys ahead, but like, to answer your question, as I'm scrolling through the several guys ranked ahead of him, I think so, because this is somebody that, we're talking about 39 home runs from the second base position. He's not the best defender in the world, but he's no slouch there. And he has done it in fractions of seasons in the past. And this is where we talk about the two things: injuries and how you weight 2021 versus 2022. Of course, 2022 weighs more in terms of the scale of what we're considering. And if we made 2021 and 2022 equal, Lowe would be probably in the top 6 because he hit 39 home runs, right? You have to consider the fact that he did that in 2021. You also have to consider the fact that in sporadic playing time in 2020, he was a 2-win player in that abbreviated season, launched 14 home runs in 56 games. We saw him in 2019, where he did have a strikeout issue that he's continued to cut down as he's, matured as a hitter, still hit 17 home runs in 82 games. Like, this power is legit. This game power is best at the position kind of pop, like Brian Dozier at second base kind of pop. Yep. And I see some similarities there, which is a really good power hitting second baseman in today's game. So, I am concerned about whether he can stay healthy completely. I think at this point he's 28. We've barely seen him stay healthy, but we've gotten one full season from him and he's gone nuclear in that full season. And I think you got to give him one more year to try to do it again before we, relegate him out of the top 10s. Even if he has a few more days off, doesn't face lefties as much, they preserve him a little bit more. He's going to produce enough. So I think this guy has as much upside as anybody in the back half of this top 10.
I don't want this middle infield tandem to turn into a what if scenario, because the duo of Wander Franco at short and Brandon Lowe at second could immediately become a top 5, maybe top 3 middle infield tandem in all of baseball. You just think what they can do, the importance of Franco's bat for Tampa offensively. And then you've got Lowe, who's got 40 homer potential. We saw it in 2021. If both those guys are consistently hampered by injuries, we're sitting here having the Tyler Glasnow conversation. Oh, he's amazing when he's on the field, but he's never on the field. I don't want to have that about two guys when Tampa, of all places, of all teams, of all contenders, needs consistency so badly.
Yep, 100%. And that middle infield could be one of the most productive, especially in the offensive side of things, in baseball with Wander. I mean, that could be a combination of home runs, driving in runs. Like, Lowe drove in 100 runs in 2021 as a second baseman, and he's going to walk. And that's the part that kind of hedges a swing and miss.
Yeah.
I'm going to take those numbers last year with a grain of salt, given that he was banged up. But even with those down numbers, that the bad offensive year in 65 games of being banged up, 104 WRC plus, and he produced 1 win, which would have scaled out to almost a 3-win season when he was hurt and kind of playing poorly for his standards. So This guy's too good to leave off the top 10. And honestly, man, I think by May, we could be saying, oh, he's top 6 or 7 in this group, and definitely ahead of the next guy we're going to talk about.
For sure. You mentioned the plate discipline. Brandon Lowe, he had a 90-point jump from batting average to OBP. He was a 10% walk rate guy. Gleyber Torres is number 9 on this list, and I think Peter makes a really good point about Gleyber. He somehow is underrated now because he was so shit on in 2021. This guy was dreadful in 2021 because he was asked to play shortstop. He failed miserably. 9 homers in nearly 130 games. Unacceptable from that guy. What does he do? He plays second base full-time in 2022. He hits .260 with a .450 slug, hits 24 homers, drives in 76, has a 115 WRC plus, and is a pretty solid defensive second baseman.
Yeah.
I think Gleyber Torres, he's not going to be top 5. I think that ship has sailed, but this guy is consistently going to be one of the more underrated bats in a lineup that gets so much publicity.
100%. And it's the Yankee effect. And also, like, I think what really piled up on him was he was playing shortstop and booting balls out there. And it was just like the whole story here of like,
it was brutal.
Gleyber Torres, the shortstop super prospect who can't field and isn't hitting for power like he was supposed to.
It was like a 3-hour nightmare every night.
Yeah, it was rough. And you bring up what Peter said, because Peter and I used to go back and forth about this. I was a big Gleyber detractor because I just looking at the swing, treating him like a prospect in 2021. I was like, this is not an approach and a swing that I would endorse. But at the same time, like, he's not a prospect, right? And he at that point going into last year had already produced 62 home runs in his big league career before the start of the 2020 season, 65, if you want to, count the abbreviated 2020. So, and this is a guy that's already proven that he can have success there. So you got to sometimes just say, hey, this guy swings differently. This guy gets away with a little bit because he's so talented. Just let it go. And after 2021's rough season, I think he really bounced back to show that, like, hey, I can still be a very productive hitter. And I think you kind of mention it. We stack him against himself a little bit, just because he had such a ridiculous 2019. And I think pitchers started to adjust a little bit to that aggressive approach, some of the holes in his swing, which will probably not allow him to get back to 38 home runs in a 125 WRC plus. But the way he's kind of adjusted back to still be able to be productive, punish mistakes, and be a good big league hitter, I believe in that. I believe in what we saw in 2022 continuing, which is the 24 home runs, which is, the 450 slug, and a strikeout rate that's palatable at 23%. If this guy walked, he would probably have a totally different offensive profile in terms of pushing closer to the 8 or 7 on this list.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested too, and we'll probably talk about this more as we preview the season, I wonder if this guy's going to be a Yankee by the end of the year, because it's hard to find 2.7 F4. Like, I want to make that clear. But, he's only got 1 year left on the deal this year. He's not cheap. I'm sure the Yankees would prefer to, minimize the tax penalties. And they've got a slew of infielders who I really trust defensively and I think can swing it. I'm interested to see how Gleyber handles that pressure this year. I usually don't try to project pressure as a reason to detract from a player, but I am interested to see, because he was floated at the deadline last year a lot. He has been discussed even through the offseason a little bit in trades, and I'm sure his name's going to come back up again as Volpe rakes, as Peraza maybe solidifies himself as a shortstop option, as some of the other guys start to push their way up a little bit as well, or Cabrera swings it and says, hey, I can play the infield too. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle this and how Gleyber handles that pressure.
I think he is a second baseman moving forward, though. Like, if he were to be traded,
I don't think he's moving from second.
No. So that's the thing. Like, I think at the beginning of the 2022 season and even at the deadline, it was almost remnants of a buy low idea, right? Like, definitely before 2021, it was buy at the lowest and see if this guy can figure it out. At the deadline, it was, okay, obviously this ship has sailed a teensy bit with the Yankees, but after you put this 2022 season in the rear view, he's a 24 homer guy at second base, and he was nearly a 3-win player. He's a good second baseman. You put him at short, he may crumble. So regardless of if he is a New York Yankee or on another team, he's a second baseman. The shortstop ship has sailed because you learned how good he is at second base. It's like the Marcus Semien conversation. I mean, dude. Semien was an average shortstop, maybe even below average. There was a year where he led Major League Baseball in errors committed. He moves to second base. He's a Gold Glove winner. He has a 40-homer season, and boom, he signs an $175 million deal. That's not Gleyber Torres, and we'll talk about Semien a little bit later on in this list. But Torres is a consistent, good performer if he's comfortable defensively, and I think he proved that this year.
Last question on Torres, because he's a guy that likes to go the other way sometimes, inside out some of those home runs to right field, and definitely benefits from the short porch a little bit out there. He obviously hits the ball hard too, but how concerned would you be as a team potentially either signing him in free agency or acquiring him at this deadline or at some point during the season, that there's an 80 something point difference in his slugging home versus away, 108 point difference in his isolated power from home and away? Would that be a concern to you if you're a team that's, adding Gleyber Torres and presumably play in more of a pitcher's park or even just a status quo park?
Yeah, I mean, short answer, yes. Long answer is a question for you. And I don't even want to get into trade package type stuff, like what would a return for Gleyber Torres look like?
Because I think it'd be light.
Yeah. So when he does hit the open market, because he's not going to get an extension from the Yankees, when he does hit the open market, what does a Gleyber Torres contract look like? I have no idea what a Gleyber Torres contract looks like.
It's going to be interesting to see how much teams consider, the splits, because it wasn't just last year. He's had those splits and,
right.
Some of the other things that come with it. So it should be interesting. And it's funny because the next guy's a guy that got moved for a pretty penny in terms of trades too. So, and we ranked him just one spot ahead of him, but obviously control and all those things come with that. But I am going to be very fascinated to see what Gleyber Torres gets contractually once he hits free agency.
Do you think JP Crawford is too much for Gleyber Torres? 5 for 50?
I think he could. I think he'll exceed that on name value. Honestly,
really,
I really do. Yeah,
I don't think so.
I think he could get something around that.
Wow. Okay, that shows you think name value still has $50 million player. I think narrative from Yankee fans, just from what has infiltrated my brain, is this guy's not worth $5 million. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, I get that 100%. I can hear the Yankees fans saying that. 100 home runs in 576 games. is pretty impressive for a second baseman, and I think that's going to be enough for a team to. He's going to be young. He's going to be really young hitting free agency, so it's going to be enough for a team, I think, to take a shot and give him a JP Crawford or more kind of deal. I really do.
Number 8 on this list is almost a utility guy, and I think he's going to bounce around a little bit for the Miami Marlins, who just acquired him via trade. The batting champ from last year in the American League, Luis Arraez, was a 3-win player last year. 603 plate appearances, hit .316 with a .375 OBP, a .420 slug. This guy walks more than he strikes out. 8.5% walk rate, 7% K rate, all in all results in a 130 WRC plus. He was an above average defender when you look at defensive runs saved and outs above average. He's got some defensive versatility. He'll probably stay put on the right side of the infield in Miami at second and first, especially now that Jazz Chisholm is in center and Gene Segura likely signed to be the third baseman. But Arraez, you're never worried about swing and miss. You're never worried about an 0 for 4 day from him because he can win a batting title. The question then becomes, can he hit 10 homers? And the answer is probably not.
So that's the interesting thing. Because I thought the same thing. And then I queued up the spray chart on Luis Arraez and put his 2022 spray chart in Marlins Park. And guess what? Baseball is such a weird fucking sport. Every single one of his home runs last year would have left the pitcher's park. That is Lone Depot.
Really?
How bizarre is that?
But there were only 8 to count. It was a quick jump.
Correct. But all 8 of them. Actually, I think if you go by what the spray charts were last year, he would have had more home runs.
Yeah, let me go to his page. Because I think it tells you, right?
It might on the I did it through another way of just like looking at the map. I think if you pull it up on Baseball Savant, I'm curious if it tells you the same thing.
Here we go.
Based on where he hit these home runs last year and some of his doubles, I think he actually would have had more homers based on where he likes. They're all pull side, and pull side's not as bad in Marlins Park. Right field is not as bad. I keep saying Marlins Park, Lone Depot. I'm always going to call it Marlins Park. How many does it say on Baseball Savant?
11. He would have been an 11 homer guy.
How crazy is that, dude?
He's got 80 juice.
Bizarre.
He's got thump, man.
He's got more thump. It was beneficial. So, that's the weird part about it. What I will say is like this guy does not hit the ball that hard.
No.
But, and of course, there's more to it than just like, oh, if you put his spray chart in this stadium, then this would have happened. Like, is the ball going to carry the same way? All those things. I don't know. But when the home run total goes up, when you do this Baseball Savant thing or look at the spray chart, you got to figure at the very least he's going to be able to replicate 8, which was way up from what he's done in previous years, right? He had 6 in his entire career before last season, which was in more than 250 games. So obviously we saw him lift the ball a little bit more, tap into a little bit more power. Slugging 420 when you're hitting 316 and getting on pace at a 375 clip is really solid. And the thing too is, I think people were kind of wondering, is he going to match the power? Even if he doesn't quite, and I still think there's more room for him gaps wise. And that was another interesting angle I heard Kim Ang talking about. And some of the Marlins, brass were saying, we actually think it's going to benefit him. 1, because we don't think he's going to lose that much power. But 2, he loves to wear out the gaps. So if he has more space to drive it into the gap, more of those doubles are going to fall. So I'm interested to see how it works for him. But regardless, let's say he just matches what he did last year. That's a shoe-in top 10 second baseman every single year. Because this is a guy that is a throwback player. And I find it really refreshing, to be honest, watching a team full of Marlins that has not been able to hit really, and has not had a pure hitter since Christian Yelich.
Right.
It's really nice to see Luis Arraez getting thrown into the fold here and kind of helping just be that consistent bat to ball guy who produced a 131 WRC plus as a 25-year-old man.
Right. Underratedly young. You would think Arraez is like 28, 29. He's 25 years old. He's got a whole bunch of baseball ahead of him, and he's a great extension candidate on a pretty cheap price tag for the Miami Marlins if they choose that avenue. He's already accrued a bunch of service time. Arraez, I find this number really interesting. He saw 61% fastballs last year. Because I think pitchers, it went through their mind like, oh, he doesn't impact the ball like a guy that I should really be scared of, so I can get away with a fastball. he saw 1,400 fastballs. He saw 600 breaking balls. He hit 350 against fastballs. So this guy got 61% fastballs. He swung and missed at less than 6% of them, so a 94% contact rate against fastballs, and he hit 350 against them. If pitchers don't learn and they think that they can get away with that because they won't get taken out of the ballpark, I want a 350 hitter on my team. And the last thing I'll say about Arraez is batting title. There is room for these guys in the game. Yuli Gurriel in 2021, batting title. There was room for him on the Houston Astros. We just had a conversation with D. Gordon, which you should go listen to on Show and Go with Taylor Davis, which was recently added to our network. So funny. I mean, it's like there's room for a D. Gordon in our game. If you are a 300 hitter, you will find your way onto a field. There's no doubt about it. And Arraez, okay, even if he's a 6 or 7 homer guy, if you hit 315, 320, you're going to be in a major league lineup. And that's a great asset for the Marlins to have.
And a reason why I agree with all of that, and a reason why I think he is going to just find a way to kind of be that annoying hitter. When we talk to a lot of these pitchers and ask, who's the most difficult guy you've had to face, I've noticed that we get more of like the Nico Horner type answers because they're not, of course, they're going to get burned by Aaron Judge and burned by some of these other guys who are just, you're going to miss your spot or they're just going to beat you to the spot and hit a 450-foot bomb.
Yeah, but you can also succeed against those guys.
You're going to succeed more against those guys. It's the throwback players that they don't really prepare for that wear them down and they don't really know how to get out. And the number one encapsulation of this, I think, and the last thing I'll say about Arraez is 4-seam fastballs we know have taken over the game. And I know sinkers have gotten involved too, but we know what the high spin, induced vertical break fastball is at the top of the zone. 4-seamers specifically, Arraez hit over 375 against last year.
Damn.
So if you're doing that, you could almost suck against everything else and still have a level of success. He obviously doesn't, but still have a level of success at the big league level. So this guy's going to hit. I think he's always going to hit. Defensively, I'm a little concerned up the middle of we're talking about double play duos. I think we're going to talk about that on the podcast.
Miserable.
On Who's Better Baseball with Ryan Finkelstein. I don't know if we'll be talking about the Arraez Wendell up the middle duo here.
So sad.
And again, for those who are wondering where Jazz is, he's center field now. So we'll be talking about him in the center field episode. But that's going to be a very interesting middle infield duo.
Yes, 100%. And listen, Marlins fans wanted batting. Well, they got batting with Luis Arraez.
Oh, God.
That was like the worst tweet ever.
That was a brutal tweet.
7, Ozzie Albies, the king of the counting stat in recent years. Ozzie Albies, whether you like it or not, is a 30-homer, 100 RBI guy. Ozzie Albies, though, he was hammered by injury. He was limited to under 300 plate appearances. He hit under 250 with an OBP under 300. He did slug over 400, but the counting stats, which he's so good at, in under 270 plate appearances, 8 homers, 35 RBIs, a walk rate under 6%, still the K rate under 20%, but a 93 WRC plus. Ozzie Albies has to hit. He's an average defensive second baseman. He's got to hit the ball at the ballpark. He's got to drive in runs. He gets ample opportunity to do so. I think he does it when he's on the field. Problem was, he just wasn't on the field in 2022.
Yeah, so injuries have become an issue for Albies, who is another deceptively younger than you think kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's just turned 26 a month ago. So still can continue to get better as a hitter. Especially from, and I'm going to say it for the 4,000th time on the Just Baseball show, if he can just get his left-handed swing a little bit closer to his right-handed swing, then he's easily a top 5 second baseman in baseball.
Yeah.
If I ever meet this guy, I won't be able to help myself. I really
was he one last year? Was he number 1
in terms of what?
Second baseman. I think on our second base rankings, Albies was 1 or 2.
I don't remember, but if Albies hit righty all the time, he might be number 1. I want to just emphasize this one last time, maybe for some of the new listeners. In his career as a righty, Albies is slashing 328, 357, 561. There's a large sample size, by the way.
MVP candidate.
A 139 WRC plus 917 OPS. From the left side, which, mind you, you hit from the left side 2/3 of the time.
Yes.
250, 310, 437. It's a 747 OPS. That's a 94 WRC plus. I would do anything for this guy to hit from the right side more. You want to know the even funnier part? Is he has actually taken a couple right on right at bats, which is the craziest part. I don't know why he did that, when he did that, or what. He has 6 at bats right on right, 2 home runs.
Just do it. Do it more.
Just do it, please. Please. But that's it for me. I mean, like, this guy, you talk about the counting stats. Yeah, sure. Do the advanced metrics not like him as much because he doesn't walk and whatever? Sure. But give me like from my second baseman, like what he did in 2021, give me 30 home runs and 106 driven in and 20 bags with a sub 20% K rate, right? Like, that was a 4-win season. I don't know how that wasn't a 5 or 6 win season, literally just because his on base percentage was 310. If he can walk a little bit more and he's got time to continue to refine the approach, he was 25 last year. Get healthy, walk a little bit more. This is a top 5 second baseman in baseball.
Well, and the contract's the contract. 7 years, $35 million. That's good for literally anybody. That's good for a 1.0 F4 guy. And Albies is so much more than that. When he's on the field for as often as he is, he's a top 3 second baseman in baseball. It's probably Altuve, McNeil, and Albies. Maybe Marcus Semien in there. But Albies, you can't argue with 30-plus homers, 100-plus driven in. I mean, this guy, the Braves have club options on him for $7 million in 2026 and 2027.
I won't even think about it.
He won't hit the open market until he's 31 years old. Like,
yeah,
obviously that's an excellent, excellent contract for them. But I think what he does for the Braves, regardless of contract, is so good for the Atlanta Braves. Like, he's the perfect second baseman for them. Is he the best second baseman in baseball? No. But is he the best second baseman for what the Braves want to do for the foreseeable future? Yes, he is.
100%. And the last thing I'll say is, bat to ball skills are really impressive. Like, high zone contact.
Yeah.
High ass chase rates. Just chase a little less. If this guy walks, man, like, he is a force offensively. And again, it's important to remember, 26 years old. So I think Albies is going to keep getting better as long as he's on the field.
Yes. All right. Number 6, Ketel Marte with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Ketel is a really interesting case study because he is center field / second base. He's so fast. He hits the crap out of the ball when he catches it perfectly on the barrel. Like, he pumps out 115, 116s off the bat. But the problem is, can he do it consistently? In 2022, the answer for the most part was no. In 2021, the answer for the most part was yes, he can. Ketel is very hit or miss in various stages of his career. I think 2023 can be a hit. I know Peter thinks 2023 can be a hit. Where do you stand on Ketel Marte?
I'll be honest. I think I'd rather have Albies next year.
Okay. Why?
I think both of these guys have some health concerns, right?
Yes.
I mean, both have been banged up. I do wonder how far, like, I think we talk about how we overlook some of the things that guys have done in the past. I feel like with Ketel Marte, we almost forget how far back in the rearview mirror that 6.2 F4 season was.
Yeah, 2019.
That was 2019. And since 2019, we had, a bad abbreviated 2020 campaign. Okay, throw that out the window. 2021, he was great for 90 games. So it's like, oh, can't wait for 2022. Here's the full season of Ketel Marte. This guy's going to ball. And he didn't ball. So, I really find it hard to believe that after 137 games last year of, like, just not really good offense and just a 1.4 F4 season, that he's magically going to, try to get back to 2019 form of him, or even that 2021 form through the first 90 games. Like, I feel better about a 26-year-old Albies doing that than maybe an almost 30-year-old Ketel Marte. But that said, would it shock me? No. And you talk about the talent and just the raw ability this guy has, switch hitter,
insane,
with the power, with the speed. I don't know. I'm starting to believe that he might not totally come back enough. Like, I don't know if he'll ever be healthy enough to do it for a full 160. And Albies, I'd rather bet on the 26-year-old to stay healthy because I think they both have a similar skill set. I think, Marte's a little freakier, but I also think Albies has a better feel to hit. So, it's one of those things, but I think both of these guys are going to be one way or another this year. And I just feel better about Albies' chances.
Well, and to that, I say fair. In 2018, he was 26 doubles, 12 triples, 14 homers. 2019, that's 6 WAR season. He finished 4th in MVP voting. Sorry, 36 doubles, 9 triples, 32 homers. And then all of a sudden you get to 2022 where he plays 7 fewer games that he did when he went 36, 9, 32 doubles, triples, homers. He's 42, 2, 12. So the doubles are still there. Where did the triples go in that cavernous ballpark? Like it's probably the most cavernous ballpark in baseball, the most triple friendly ballpark in baseball, not named Coors Field. And then the power dissipates as well. So I'm just curious, like, I mentioned it when I gave you the rundown a couple of minutes ago, but, consistency of hard contact, that went away. It was there in 2019. It was there when he was on the field in 2021. It was just not there at all in 2022. And I mean, he's going to be 29 years old. Like, this could absolutely mean that the consistency of crazy hard contact is just not here to stay at any point.
This is another guy where I think it's a shaky year this year, and now it's outside of the top 10, which would suck because I love Marte as a player.
And he just signed that extension, right? He was 5 years, 76. That kicks in this year.
Thank goodness for his sake.
But
who knows? It could end up being a good value deal for the D-backs. But I think it was smart for him to take that money, not with the uncertainty around him. Last thing I'll say is, you say consistency, like frequency of hard contact. Big tell here. He still hit the ball really hard last year, but a 2 mile per hour dip in 90th percentile exit velocity is generally going to mean a very large dip in just overall power numbers and the overall power department. So, I think that kind of tells you something there.
Yep. And the isolated power dropped about 75 points.
Those will always cross over.
Yep. And the BABIP dropped 75 points here. It went from 350 to 276, which is kind of crazy. So that's what you got with Ketel Marte at 6. Number 5 is Nico Hoerner, who was a 4-win player this past year. Count on the defense, baby. All he needed to do was hit a little bit, and he hit a lot of it. 281, 327, 410 slash line, drove in 55. He doesn't walk, but he doesn't strike out. An 11% K rate, a WRC plus over 105. I mean, he is probably the best defensive second baseman in baseball now.
It's going to be a great competition between a lot of like shortstops who are now going to second base. And I think it's Hoerner's title to defend right now. I've made my case for Torres, who I think is going to be a carbon copy of him, especially on the defensive side of things. I don't know if we'll quite have the offense there, right away like Hoerner did. But there's going to be some of those guys I move over that I'm interested in. But I think Hoerner is the guy defensively at second base. You mentioned the offense, man, and use something that you would have totally roasted me for saying, a lot of it. You would have roasted me for saying that.
A lot of it? I say a lot of it.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, fair. You would have roasted me. I'm just saying.
No, judgment-free zone. I've never judged you before on this podcast.
Oh, you've never.
No, I'm a nice guy.
I get show notes from you afterwards. Like, this was stupid. You shouldn't have said this. You should.
And I always send him, even if I'm not up at like 1:30, I'll schedule the email to go at like 1:30 or 2 a.m. just so he thinks I'm up obsessing over every flaw that he's committed.
Yeah, and you see my mom. But the zone contact is what stands out to me, man, because you talk about how he hit, right? And to go from 0 homers to 10 home runs when you got 93% zone contact, that shit plays. Like, elite defense, 93% zone contact, and fringy enough power where at least he's leaving the yard. And Arraez amount of time last year, a little bit more.
Yeah,
that's all you need. Because same conversation that we had with Arraez. Think Luis Arraez with way better defense and speed.
Yeah,
like that, and I'm sure like Arraez is probably a little bit more elite bat to ball wise, but like marginally.
But defense and speed, that's the separator between top 5 and 8th.
Correct. And that's why I don't think Nico Hoerner, like, 5 is a phenomenal spot for this guy after 1 year. But I wouldn't be surprised if this guy ends up being like how did he produce 6 F-WAR kind of guy.
Right.
Ben Zobrist, he had like a 6 or 7 F-WAR season. And I stump people with that trivia question all the time. And it was because of the defense, the stolen bases, the bat to ball, sneaking enough home runs, and just counting everything in the analytical side, just all adding up to give you a 6-WAR season. I think that's what this dude's going to do. And I feel very good. If you told me you asked me what's his floor, F-WAR wise, and I know F-WAR isn't the whole story,
3.
but I'd say 3, and I wouldn't lose one lick of sleep about it.
So this feels like the guy that finds loopholes in F-WAR, right? This feels like the guy that like somehow says, okay, well, I'm not an 11-win player like Judge because I'm not Roger Maris 2.0, but what I can do is I can sprinkle a little bit of elite defense, and I can sprinkle a little bit of, base running acumen, and like everything just adds up. So instead of going 8 from the bat, 3 from the defense, you are 1.5 from the bat, 2.5 from the defense, 1 from the base running. Like it's adding up to be a 4-win player. And that's the beauty of Nico Hoerner. I love that he's a top 5 guy the first time that he's considered a second baseman, because Mike Petriello put out this great thread. He was doing these threads mid-season last year. And it was guys that are grading out so effectively defensively and what they're doing so well. Guys that are narrative-based, considered elite defensive players that don't grade out exceptionally well by DRS and OAA. Here are the plays that ding them a bit. And one of his like love threads was about Nico Hoerner, where he was, this guy is one of the best defenders in baseball. Here's why. The defensive acumen of Nico Hoerner is close to unmatched in Major League Baseball.
And then you add in 20 for 22 on stolen bases.
Yeah, dude.
Like, this guy's just a value in every single way. Even if for whatever reason he's not swinging it, he's going to give you value in other spots. Feel really good about Hoerner. But there is something about when you get to the top 4, now you start to see the ceiling go up, right? And that's where it's fun.
Well, 4's a 6-win player, man. Yeah. Andres Gimenez out of fucking nowhere was a 6.1 F-WAR guy. The 4th best second baseman in baseball, Andres Gimenez. He hit 300. He slashed 297, 371, 466, 17 homers, just under 70 driven in, 20% K rate, 6% walk rate. But this guy, 300 hitter with close to 20 bombs, a 140 WRC plus. Not to mention, he was arguably the best defensive second baseman in baseball. 16 defensive runs saved, 12 outs above average. This guy all of a sudden is Robin to J-Ram's Batman in Cleveland, and they needed a Robin really fucking bad.
Really bad. And rarely do you do well on the, trades of superstars, especially when you're leveraged. And by leverage, I mean, there wasn't that much control of Lindor, right? We look at the Mookie Betts trade and we love to shit on the Red Sox about it. But at the end of the day, Chaim Bloom was set up for failure on the Mookie Betts trade because he was never going to get that blue chip prospect because he had no leverage. Mookie was about to hit free agency. Lindor had a little bit more control, but the leverage wasn't totally there. And to have a player, I mean, Amed Rosario in his own respect has turned into a solid big leaguer. But so Andres Gimenez is I don't think you can replace the production of Lindor, but a 6-win season is not far off. I know it's different from second versus shortstop, and Lindor brings a lot to the table, but I mean, this is as good as you could have made out in that trade because of the player that that Gimenez has turned into. And crazy enough, man, he was 23 last year.
I know,
dude. 23 years old, and he also played 18 games at short. Like, he's good enough to move over there and hold it down, kind of like Hoerner. And the last thing I'll say before I kick it back to you is, and of course, it's like no shit. You're ranking from 10 to 1. Of course, each guy's going to get better and better. But in terms of the profile with some of these guys, I feel like we've gone through like an evolution here of just like pressing upgrade, and each guy has another little wrinkle to their game and has just a higher ceiling and the other tools that all of these guys are pretty adept at. And I feel like Gimenez is just that next upgrade, right? We took Nico Hoerner, good bat to ball guy, great defender, good speed, and we hit upgrade in terms of, more power, maybe better defense somehow, and just more overall production, but kind of a similar mold of great defense, good speed. It's 20 for 23 on stolen bases, like just a really dynamic, well-rounded player. But the 466 slug is what catches me totally off guard, man. Like, I don't think anyone saw that coming.
100%, dude. And I love the point you make about being leveraged by the player. Like, Lindor was a sitting duck. He was going to get moved. Question was going to be, where is he getting moved to? The answer was the Mets. You get Rosario and Gimenez back. as the headline pieces. You made the comp to the Mookie Betts deal from Boston to the Dodgers. They get Verdugo, Jeter Downs, Connor Wong back. Verdugo and Ahmed Rosario, kind of similar, right? Like you knew that those were young, exciting talents who knew what they were going to be. They're both slightly above average players, right? Like I would say Rosario and Verdugo are a good comp. What Cleveland aced that the Red Sox failed miserably was Boston just DFA'd the guy that could turn into a star.
Yeah.
The guy that could turn into a star has exceeded star expectations in Gimenez. So it is everything that the Red Sox were hoping for with Jeter Downs. And I'm sorry that the Red Sox caught a stray here, but this is exactly the formula that Cleveland was trying to follow.
I want to be clear too. I would have made the same mistake. I loved Jeter Downs. Yeah. I thought that's a ball, power, stolen bases. Like he could do a little bit of everything. I am so shocked that Jeter Downs is not the player. I defended that trade to a degree when it first happened because of how much I like Jeter Downs and the high floor of Verdugo. Last thing I'll say to kind of get back to Gimenez here is Cleveland did a great job of IDing a guy that was undervalued. Both of them had struggled in a small spurt at the big league level with the Mets. And Gimenez had, put up okay offensive numbers in Double-A. Before they acquired him, he was coming off of 49 games, like a 1 WAR. He was pretty good, I guess, for the Mets. But before that, in 2019 in Double-A, Gimenez was a 105 WRC plus guy. Hit 250 and got on base at a 309 clip and 387 slug. Like this was a glove first guy that I don't think anybody dreamed of this kind of offensive potential. You look at FanGraphs, they didn't really have him with that kind of offensive potential. You look at a lot of the other evaluators, they didn't have that kind of offensive potential. And the craziest part, Jack, he's going to still get better.
Yeah.
Talking about 26-year-olds that still have time. Here's a 24-year-old who still has time to keep getting better and has a 6-win season to build off of.
Start your franchise from scratch. Everybody is, okay, expansion team, right? Say instead of a team relocating to Vegas, it was an expansion team in Vegas. All the top 10 guys at each position protected except second base. You have your pick of the litter as second baseman. Is Gimenez the guy you pick?
Of all of the second basemen
right now? Of all the second basemen, like you think Altuve, he's older. McNeil.
If I'm starting a franchise, I think absolutely.
Gold Glover, 6th in MVP voting, 300 hitter.
If we're considering team control, youth, all that good stuff. Yeah. I mean, dude, how many 23-year-olds have put up a 6 WAR season at second base?
No, man. I mean, before Giannis won his MVPs, LeBron was clearly the best player in basketball, but you pulled all 30 GMs and Giannis ran away with the vote because of the youth, because of the control. Now it's Luka Doncic. This feels like, obviously it's not Giannis or Luka. If you did that, it would probably be one of ththese young shortstops. It would be like a Wander or probably a Julio Rodriguez is up there. But if you were to give me second baseman and say, pick one, and you're starting a franchise right now, it's probably the 24-year-old.
100%. I'd struggle to find somebody that's more valuable. And even that we're about to get to the next 3 guys ahead. They're all quote unquote older. And that's not who I'm building my franchise with. But for next year, I like these 3 guys a little bit more potentially. I think you can make the case that Gimenez is ahead of this next guy. But ultimately it was a quote unquote down year for him. And he still had a 4 F4, so I'll give you the floor.
Right. And Albies was not number 1 last year because this guy was number 1 last year. He was coming off of that insane year with Toronto. He signed that $175 million deal. Marcus Semien is our 3rd best second baseman in baseball in 2023. Now with Texas, obviously. You mentioned the down year. This guy still played all the time, over 700 plate appearances. Very few guys in Major League Baseball eclipse 700 plate appearances. Semien does it pretty much every year. He was a 4.2 F4 guy, hit 248, 304, 429, still had 26 homers, 83 driven in. He had a 16.5% K rate, a 107 WRC plus, and coming off of that Gold Glove caliber year in 2021, he was Gold Glove caliber again in 2022. 11 defensive runs saved, 8 outs above average. This guy is a star. He was worth that $175 million deal.
Yeah, isn't it funny how we were talking about how big that contract was, and then now after this past offseason, I look back at that contract and we're like, That's a pretty good deal. 7 years, 175,
Xander
25 a
Bogaerts.
year.
Xander Bogaerts at the same age got over $100 million more.
And do you have much concern about Semien like aging well? Like even age
Not at all.
37,
Not at
38
all.
at second base. Okay, maybe he won't be elite defensively. He's still going to run into baseballs. He's still going to play good defense. You're not going to be like, is he going to be the most valuable player in the world? Is he going to be $25 million player? Probably not, but he's not going to be that like gaping hole that you're like, oh my gosh, when does he come off the books? But for now, I think we got to put, and especially in today's game, we got to put stock in availability. To your point, Jack, the last 4 full seasons, and I'm not going to count 2020, which he still did play 53 of 60 games.
Yeah.
But there was obviously a million reasons why you could miss a game, COVID protocols, whatever it could be. Since 2018, 159 games, 162 games, 162 games, 161 games. And then even go back to 2016, 159 games, 2015, 155 games. This guy is always available. And while he might not be the best player in baseball available every day, he's a all-star caliber talent that is always ready to go and always available. That has to matter. When it comes to weighing 21 and 22, we put Brandon Lowe on this list because of the fact that he had such an insane 21 where he hit 40 home runs, 39 home runs. Semien hit 45 in 2021. Then still put up 26 last year, went 25-25 with 25 bags, career high in that department too. Could have been a little bit more efficient. I think he got thrown out 8 times, but saw the strikeout rate drop, had a phenomenal second half and still produced a 4.2. So with the strong second half, there's nowhere but the top 3 to put this guy. And if it weren't for the years that 2 and 1 had, I would be very bullish on Semien potentially being, pushed even a little bit higher. But at the same time, you can make the case that Andres Gimenez could be in the top 3, which is a guy that I kind of wanted to put in there too. So it just shows you how talented this position gets at the top 4 and why our call was 4 hours long.
Yes. And baseball reference quirk, Marcus Semien also led the American League in sacrifice flies with 10. So he's a run producer. He puts the ball in the air when you need to. Situational baseball.
That's a guy. That's my kind of player. I hold the high school record at Pinecrest.
Shut up.
Broke Griffin Conine's record of sacrifice flies. The difference was his were by accident and mine was me getting all of it. But
hell yeah.
Immortalized for sacrifices.
God, those probably felt so good coming off the bat too.
Oh, I'm like, that one might get out.
It got all of it. Straight away center.
Tag up, baby. I was always checking. You better tag, you motherfucker. Like, you better not lose me some points on the batting average. Tag up. That shit's not leaving the yard.
So mine was like, and they took the bat out of my hands very, very early, but mine was, damn, that felt good. And then all of a sudden it's like a soft liner to short that like they have no problem.
Yeah, that's when you know it's time to go to the mound.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you know what? That's fine. I'll deal with that. All right, number 2, Jeff McNeil, 6-win player, batting title, hit 326 with a 382 on base, slugged 450, just 9 homers, 62 driven in. But this guy walked 7% of the time, struck out 10% of the time. He had a 143 WRC plus. He's one of the better defensive second basemen in baseball. McNeil just signed that $50 million extension. That was perfect allocation of funds from Steve Cohen. I think they got a steal for a guy that is consistently going to be near the top of Major League Baseball in hits and in batting average.
I mean, man, there was that like Mets-wide issue in 2021 offensively. And they kind of cleaned house staff-wise, and really kind of got back to the basics with hitting philosophy. And I think one of the biggest, Lindor was a casualty of it in 2021. I think McNeil was the biggest casualty of kind of the hitting philosophy or lack thereof that season, because he just wasn't himself. And what's interesting though is I covered a couple Mets games credentialed, and it was just a lot of fun to be in a different clubhouse, different environment. But it wasn't that fun at times because of how rough the vibe was there. Yeah. And I was expecting some like, kind of dark, dreary, maybe a rough attitude from Jeff McNeil. And there were times where he was a little snappy, a couple times when I went there. But the one thing that I kept seeing that kind of prevailed with Jeff McNeil was that he wasn't worried about it. And I really believed that he wasn't worried about it. He's like, I'll get back to who I am. I'm not worried about it, and that was totally the vibe I got. And then what does he do in 2022? He gets right back to who he is, if not better, right? 326, 382, 454, a 143 WRC plus is second highest of his career. besides 2019 where he had a 144 WRC plus. But I'd argue that this is by far the best season of his career because he played the most games. He played even better defense than we've seen. He's continued to get better defensively. He struck out the least we've seen him strike out. And the guy just gets on base, man. So he is as safe of a bet to just hit as you're going to find, and runs into just enough extra base hits or just enough home runs, makes up for it with a ton of extra base hits, right? 39 doubles last year. So even if it's only 9 home runs, 39 doubles is going to up that slugging, and he slugged 454.
Spoiler alert. There's no better middle infield tandem in Major League Baseball than McNeil and Lindor.
Absolutely
it's not close.
I won't even listen to it. Unless Marcus Semien and Corey Seager both have career years at the same time, I won't, or Jeremy Pena makes like the superstar leap. Both of those very unlikely. It's not even close.
You could have 14 WAR in the middle infield for the Mets this year. Not outlandish.
No. Think about just the infield period, what you could have WAR wise. You could have 14 from the middle infield, another 5 or so from Pete Alonso.
Yeah.
And then whatever you get from third base.
Another win and a half from Eduardo Escobar.
And Brett Beatty. And, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to handle that. But no, this is the best middle infield tandem in baseball.
Yeah. Number 1, though, Jose Altuve. He's here again. He will be here, it feels like, for 5 more years. 6.6 F4, over 600 plate appearances. He hit 300 with a 533 slug, 28 homers, 11% walk rate, 14% K rate, a 164 WRC plus, was top 5 in all of baseball. He did struggle a bit defensively by the advanced metrics, but if you know anything about Jose Altuve, it's that you shouldn't give a single shit about the defensive advanced metrics. This guy is a World Series mainstay. He's a future Hall of Famer.
That was going to be my question.
And he's a 164 WRC plus guy when he's 32 years old, man. He's absolutely the top second baseman in the game.
He just fucked around and had the best season of his career.
I know.
Like when we were everyone was counting him out, not saying like he's cooked and done, but like kind of like best days are behind him potentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Without Correa,
what was
like
the joke
what's
that we had
Altuve
on the
do?
pod? What was the joke we had at the beginning of the season? He's like a 3 true outcome guy. You
Oh,
brought
yeah,
that
yeah.
up. Which was satirical, but like that's what he was looking like in the beginning of the year, and
You're right.
he couldn't really throw the baseball, and we're like, whoa! But this guy has overcome every single like odd that was stacked against him, right? And that's the thing, is he seems to always find a way to just get back to who he is and then some, and to do what he did last year is remarkable. And I don't know if you've seen like what he did in the second half, because he did shake off that kind of rough, very, very early start. But what he did in the second half was even more remarkable. 175 WRC plus. The speed is still a big part of his game. In the second half, he slashed 328, 409, 551. It's a 960 OPS. So just to see what he did last year, and sure, like maybe the defense took a little bit of a hit, which is interesting because I think if he defended better by the advanced metrics, he probably has an 8-win season last year. Based on what he hit, 300, 387, 533, and stole 18 bags on 19 tries and launched 28 home runs. So it somehow steals 13 more bases with better efficiency. Like he was 5 for 8 in 2021. He was 18 for 19 this past year. He nearly matches his home run total in 5 less games and ups his batting average, on base percentage, slugging percentage, walk rate, like everything. This guy legitimately just had arguably the best year of his career. You could maybe refer back to 2016 as the best year of his career. But right there at age 32, that's why I was going to say, is he a Hall of Famer? Like if he ended his career today, probably just shy. But by the time he's done, you assume he gives you another 3-4 years, like something like this, and then another 6-7 years total. This guy's going to Cooperstown, man.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's a first ballot guy just because the narrative around him.
Yeah, you'll have you'll have some detractors because of the whole
garbage can. Yeah,
this guy's going to be done by the time he's done, Jack. What is it going to be? 300 stolen bases and 300 home runs and a 307 career hitter right now. Like that might be first ballot, dude.
Well, and he's going to get to 2,000 hits this year. He's going to get to 700 RBIs this year. He's going to get to 300 stolen bases this year. He's an MVP, 8-time All-Star, 2 times World Series champ, 6-time Silver Slugger, 3 batting titles, an ALCS MVP, a Gold Glove winner. And as I scroll on Baseball Reference, I want to find where he stacks up with like WAR and JAWS score. Let's see. Hall of Fame monitor. He is, so the likely Hall of Fame, likely Hall of Famer is like a 100 scale. It's almost like a WRC plus scale. Altuve checks in at 161. Okay. So this guy has 47 career WAR. His 7-year peak is 40.
Yeah, that's just, and he's playing the best he has played. He's on the top of his game.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say or ask you is, what if you're going into this coming season? Obviously, our ranking is number 1. Gun to your head, who would you take of this group to have the highest F4 in 2023?
McNeil.
Really? You're fighting for your life here, and you're rolling with McNeil to say
Altuve.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, McNeil's not a bad answer. I was going to accept that happily, but
most similar hitters in terms of like career WAR through age 32 here: Ryan Sandberg, Hanley Ramirez, Robinson Cano, Dustin Pedroia, Craig Biggio, Derek Jeter, Michael Young, Roberto Alomar.
On that list. It's very similar with the like home run, stolen bases, batting average kind of thing. In terms of like not elite in the home run, stolen base, but very, very good, and then elite in the batting average department. Yeah, that's a good crew. If Hanley Ramirez maintained his peak, his peak was, people forget, back-to-back 7 more seasons. Hanley Ramirez was a dude.
D. Strange Gordon just said Prime Hanley was probably the most talented player he's ever seen.
Watching him come up as a kid, like watching legitimately, he was why I tuned in every single game. Although that middle infield, him and Dan Uglo was electric. That's one of the most talented dudes you're going to see. So again, that is a fun group, and I'm taking Altuve to repeat it again this coming year and continue to strengthen that Hall of Fame case. For as much of the Astro haters out there, which I hear you. You can't take away what this guy has done over the course of 1,578 games plus the postseason. If you want to subtract like Jim Boeheim style, 300 of those games or 400 of those games, or whatever, subtract even the seasons where he allegedly cheated, I think you could still make a Hall of Fame case. So like, you got to be honest with yourself. Like Peter always talks about this. Like, I don't like Altuve, but bro, I can't deny the greatness there. And I think that's how every Yankee, Dodger, whatever fan should realistically look at it. Don't have to like him. Don't have to go to dinner with him, but you got to appreciate how freaking talented this guy is.
I'd go to dinner with Jose Altuve. So again, to recap, India and Rodgers are the 2 honorable mentions. Brandon Lowe, 10, Gleyber Torres, 9, Luis Arraez, 8, Ozzie Albies, 7, 6 is Ketel Marte, Nico Horner is number 5, Andres Gimenez, 4, Marcus Semien, 3, Jeff McNeil, 2, and Jose Altuve is just baseball's best second baseman in Major League Baseball in 2023. I'm going to go enjoy the All-Star game. Fair?
Enjoy. Try your best, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Every link you need is in the show notes. Peter and I will talk to you with another positional top 10 tomorrow.